All right, welcome. Today, we're diving into a really powerful and honestly pretty intense prophecy from the book of Isaiah. We're talking about chapter 3, which lays out step by step how a nation completely falls apart. So, here's how we're going to break it down. We're going to walk through this chapter by looking at 6 key themes. This will take us right from the very first warning signs all the way to the devastating end. Okay, first up, the pillars fall. This is where it all starts. The prophecy shows us how the very foundations of their society get kicked out from under them, one by one. So, right out of the gate, the prophecy hits them where it hurts the most. It says, God will take away the stay and the staff. Now, both those words just mean support. And this isn't some abstract idea. The text immediately tells us what it's talking about: the whole stay of bread and the whole stay of water. It's a direct, unambiguous prophecy of a coming famine. And this isn't just poetry. It's anchored in a really brutal, real-world event. The sources connect this prophecy directly to the siege of Jerusalem by the Babylonians back in 587 BC. And history tells us that during that siege, food and water scarcity was absolutely severe. So this prediction was fulfilled with just chilling accuracy. But the collapse goes way beyond just famine. Once the food and water are gone, the human infrastructure just gets dismantled. Look at this list. It's a who's who of a functioning society, and they're all being removed. The mighty man, the judge, the prophet, the captain, everyone. This creates a complete leadership vacuum. Every single skilled person is either killed or taken captive to Babylon. It's like the entire society is being hollowed out, starting from the very top. So what happens when you gut a society of all its leaders? Well, the prophecy moves on to describe the inevitable result: absolute chaos. Yeah, in place of all of those experienced leaders, you get, well, what the text calls children and babes, and that means exactly what it sounds like. You get this inexperienced, rash, probably corrupt leadership taking over. And the result? A total breakdown of social order, where people just turn on each other. And again, this wasn't just a hypothetical threat. If you look at the history of Judah around this time, it was filled with a super fast succession of very young kings. I mean, look at these ages. Manasseh was 12, Josiah was only 8. And while some, like Josiah, turned out to be good, many of them made just disastrous decisions, bad alliances, leading people into idolatry, things that just sped up the nation's downfall. It gets so bad, the prophecy paints this picture of someone literally grabbing their brother and begging him, "Hey, you have a cloak? You be our leader." Think about that. The only qualification left is owning a single decent piece of clothing. But the brother says no. He's like, "I can't fix this. I have no food. I have nothing. I can't be a healer for this ruin." Leadership stops being an honor and becomes a burden nobody wants because there's absolutely nothing left to lead. So, in the middle of all this chaos and collapse, the prophecy basically draws a line in the sand. It makes a really sharp, clear distinction between two different groups of people. First, it talks about the wicked, and it's pretty blunt. It says their sin was so obvious, it was written all over their faces. They weren't trying to hide it. They declared their sin openly, like Sodom. Their whole vibe, their actions, everything just testified against them. It was a public and shameless provocation of God. And that sets up this really stark contrast, because right after that, it says to tell the righteous that it shall be well with him. So even in a completely collapsing nation, the promise is that the righteous will, in the end, be okay. They'll eat the fruit of their doings. But for the wicked, the exact opposite. Woe unto the wicked. They're going to get what's coming to them, the reward of his hands. It's a message of individual accountability, even in a national disaster. From there, the prophecy really zooms in. It turns its focus directly on the leaders, the wealthy elite, the very people who were supposed to be in charge, but instead just made everything worse. Okay, so there's this one verse here, verse 12, that says, "Women rule over them." Now, our source material points to a specific interpretation from Ezra Taft Benson, who saw this as reflecting a breakdown of traditional family structures. We're just presenting that viewpoint because it's what the source highlights, to give you an idea of how these verses have been understood over time. And then you get this, a direct, angry question from God to these leaders. "What mean ye that ye beat my people to pieces, and grind the faces of the poor?" I mean, that imagery is so visceral, isn't it? Grinding the faces of the poor. It is just a powerful, raw indictment of how they exploited and abused the most vulnerable people in their society. All right, now the prophecy shifts gears in a big way. It moves from these direct accusations into this really powerful and vivid allegory, a kind of symbolic story to describe the nation's pride and the punishment that's on its way. To really get what's coming next, you have to understand this key metaphor. The prophecy starts talking about the daughters of Zion, and this isn't literally just about the women of the city. Zion is another name for Jerusalem, so the city itself is being personified as this proud, haughty, beautifully dressed woman who is completely obsessed with her looks and has totally forgotten her God. And what follows is this long, incredibly detailed list. I think it's something like 21 different items of every single piece of luxury you can imagine. We're talking tinkling ornaments, fancy hairnets, bracelets, the whole 9 yards. The point is, the prophecy describes how every last symbol of their wealth and pride is going to be systematically stripped away. And this is the result. It's a total, brutal reversal of their status. Everything that once symbolized beauty and wealth is replaced with a mark of shame and suffering. Instead of a sweet smell, there's a stink, probably from disease. Instead of a fine girdle or belt, there are just rags. Instead of well-set hair, there's baldness from sickness or mourning. And instead of beauty, there's burning, which could mean being branded like a slave or being covered in the ashes of grief. And this all leads to the final scene. The prophecy culminates in this stark, unforgettable picture of just total loss and desolation. First, the men, the warriors and protectors. They all fall by the sword. Then, the city itself, remember, personified as that woman, is left completely desolate. And the final image is her sitting upon the ground. In the ancient world, that was the ultimate posture of deep, deep mourning and total humiliation. And check this out. Our source material points out a really stunning historical parallel. Centuries after Isaiah wrote this, when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD, they actually minted a coin to celebrate their victory. It's called the Judea Capta coin. And what does it show? A woman sitting and mourning under a palm tree. It's an image that looks like it was ripped straight from this verse. It's incredible and suggests that maybe this prophecy had a second, even more terrible fulfillment. The final, devastating image of this whole prophecy, and it actually spills over into the first verse of the next chapter, is a picture of just catastrophic demographic collapse. The ratio of women to men is now 7-to-1. So many men have been killed that you have 7 women pleading with 1 man. And they're not even asking for his support. They say, "We'll provide our own food and clothes. Just let us be called by your name," simply to take away the terrible shame of being childless in that culture. So what are we left with? It's a really sobering account, isn't it? One that ties a nation's fate directly to things like justice, the quality of its leadership, and its humility. And it leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. What are the echoes of this story throughout history?